Hello, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. My name is Leah Michelin. I'm the principal here at West Briar Middle School, and I'm really excited to see so many faces here on a Saturday morning. I want to thank you all for coming. We are very honored and excited to have Superintendent Miles here. I know that many of you are here and because we have questions and we're a bit nervous because change can be scary, and that's okay. But I am here to tell you that I have heard Superintendent Miles's vision for HISD, and I can tell you from the bottom of my heart that it aligns with West Briar Middle School, and we are excited about Destination 2035 and preparing our students to be competent workforce members in 2035. And we align with that vision of high expectations and putting students first. So I want to also thank our West Area feeder pattern, who I have present with me. If you'll kind of raise your hand, thank you for joining us. This is the Westside High School feeder pattern. Thank you for being here and supporting us. We also have West Briar's Executive Director, Dr. April Williams. Thank you for being here. Thank you. And our West Area Division Superintendent, Dr. Laura Stout. Thank you for being here. And then I want to thank you, Superintendent Miles, for picking West Briar Middle School and getting to see our wonderful feeder pattern for yourself. We're honored and so thankful for you to join us. So without further ado, Superintendent Mike Miles.
Thank you for that introduction. And I have a couple introductions on my own. We have a couple board members here. Adam Ravon is one of our great board members. And Michelle Arnold Cruz, right here. And is there any other board members here? Okay. And we also have our Chief of Staff here, Carrie Briggs, if Carrie will stand up. And another Division Superintendent, Orlando Riddick. And I know we spend time on introducing people that you may not know, but you've got to know that behind the scenes, these folks are working really, really hard to help all of our kids in HISD. It's a big district, and we had a short period of time to get ready for school, and so they're really running hard for you and for the kids. And I'm happy to be here at West Briar. I've been in the NES and NES schools. I've done about 10 of these. Hey, Robert Ceccarelli's here. Done about 10 of these over the summer, and so happy to be here, and we'll answer your questions momentarily. But first, I want to talk a little bit about the why and what we have facing us as a district. Maybe not so much as West Briar, because you guys are doing really well for your students, and we're going to talk about that too. But everything sits in a context, and so let's talk about that first, okay? And then we'll get to your specific questions about this school and what you have, your concerns for this area and this coming year. I know you don't know me that well. As you can see, I don't have two heads. And I've hidden my tail. So, but I grew up poor. My father's black, my mother's Japanese. My father spent a lot of time in Vietnam and Korea. He was a soldier. My mom had 8 kids. I'm one of 8. And we grew up in Colorado Springs for part of my early years. And we were poor, and poor means different things to different people. My kind of poor was we had often only one meal a day, and that meal was oatmeal. And sometimes we got lucky and had 2 meals a day. So I got 2 bowls of oatmeal. And to this day, I don't like oatmeal as a result. But I did have other advantages, despite the poverty, despite having a speech impediment. If there was IDEA in those days, I would have had an IEP because I couldn't speak well, couldn't talk right. I had parents. My dad, despite his alcoholism, used to say to me and the kids, being born in a garage doesn't make you a car. Because he believed that we could escape our current situation and not be destined to remain in poverty. He also was the one who talked to me and my brothers and sisters about ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country. I grew up in the days of Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy in the 60s. Yeah, that's how old I am. And in those days, it was a lot more about the common good and not, thinking about your own interests. I also had a mom who understood. She didn't speak English. She's Japanese, but understood that education was the way out for her kids. And she pushed us to do the best we could in school. She couldn't help us with homework, but she made sure we sat at that kitchen table every single day after school doing the work, the homework. So for me, education has been the secret to my success. I also had great teachers. I had a speech impediment. First grade, 2 teachers took me by the hand. They didn't say, poor kid, one of 8 kids, let's not push him. He has, he's challenged. He's minority. They didn't do that. They took me by the hand. I had to miss 1 recess every day. And during phonics class, I went with them, and they taught me how to speak. And as a result of those 2 teachers, but also other teachers, I was able to live the dream that my parents dreamed for me, that we did escape poverty, my brothers and sisters and I. I got to go to West Point, United States Military Academy, one of the toughest schools in the nation, and got to be an Army officer after that. Army Ranger, company commander. Then when I left the Army, I wanted to be a diplomat. Went to school at University of California, Berkeley, got a degree in Slavic languages and literature. Then I went to Columbia, an Ivy League school in New York, got a degree in international affairs and public policy. I was able to do that, and then I joined the State Department. Worked for the Soviet desk back in the day when there was the Soviet Union. Then I became a diplomat. I actually did accomplish what I set out to do when I left the Army, and I was a diplomat in Poland and in Russia. We had a couple of kids while we were abroad, so we came back home to Colorado, and my wife and I thought, okay, what are we going to do now? And I said, the most important thing in America today, this was back in 1995, is educating kids. I'm a professional public servant, Army, diplomat, and I started teaching. I taught at the same high school I graduated from, Fountain Fort Carson High School. Taught for 4 years, then was a principal for 4 years, was an assistant superintendent for 3 years, and then superintendent of Harrison School District in Colorado Springs for 6. Then went on to lead Dallas Independent School District for 3. After that, started my own charter network for 6 years, and now I'm here. But as you can see, there's a couple threads in all of that. So that's a lot of mileage, and I'm 92 years old. All right, you laughed, because the last time I told that joke, people didn't laugh, and they thought I really was 92 years old. It's like, come on, man, I know I'm old, but not old. Anyway, the 2 threads in all of that, one is public service. That's what I do. And in education, I've always served underserved kids. Always. And the second thing is the thread of teachers and education helping me and my trying to help kids by helping teachers. Despite everything you've heard, I love teachers, including librarians, and I love kids. All right. All that is about me. Let's talk about us. Let's talk about where we are as a district. Where we are as a district is also has a context. Let me give you that context, okay? And again, the footnote here is we're going to talk about you guys in a minute, and you're doing a great job. I'm talking about West Briar School, kids and teachers and administrators. Doing a great job. I'm going to show you what you're doing here in a minute, but here's the context. The context in which we sit is an education system that has failed the promise given to kids. The system for me worked at that time. I really am old, and the system has grown, and now we have a system that is not working for most kids, for most underserved kids. Okay? So the promise has been broken. Here's some data for you. West Briar is good at data. Look at that left-hand column. What it says there is the National Assessment of Educational Progress, which is often called the nation's report card, right? And generally speaking, the numbers there mean that the percentage of kids who are proficient or higher. So that's a proxy for can you read at grade level, okay? So the top number says 32% of the nation's fourth graders are reading at grade level or they're proficient or higher, okay? 30% of Texas fourth graders, right, is what it says. 26% for urban districts, so large urbans, and for HISD, 19%. So that's not good. And if you look across, you can see what the 8th grade reading scores are like. Same kind of trend. So one of our problems is that as a whole, and again, I'm not talking about your kids, most of them, I'm talking about our kids, we have a proficiency problem. Okay, that's problem number one. Problem number two is that we in America and we in ISD have not been able to close that gap for over 20 years. I showed 19 years up here. In 2022, I just showed you that it was 19% proficient. In 2000, proficient. 19 years have passed. We, HISD, moved the needle 1 percentage point. That's problem number two. Problem number three is even worse. As a district, again. Problem number three is, that's 8th grade, that's still problem number two. Problem number three is we have an achievement gap, a huge one. So this is the NAEP, 4th grade we were just talking about. And what was it, 19%? Well, it's not 19% for all kids. White students, 60% proficient. So that's good. Let's celebrate that. Black kids, 11%. Hispanic kids, 14%. And I hope you all are feeling that that's not a good thing. And that's depressing. It should make every one of us frustrated, angry, or urgent. No other words can describe that. That's a huge gap. That's reading, and math is worse as far as the gap goes, right? 58% percentage point difference. That's us, right, in 2022. Problem number one, low proficiency. Problem number two, inability to change that. Problem number three, huge gap. And then there's a fourth problem, and I'll get to that in a minute. So even if you look at STAR scores, we've got kids who are not doing well. You want to know why we started with the NES schools? It's because their proficiency is even lower. The gaps are even higher. That's why. That's their 4th grade reading, 4th grade math. This is 8th grade reading, 8th grade math. High school English 1, algebra. We want to get kids ready for the world after high school. We're going to do it with 15% of our kids being proficient in algebra. Only a fourth of our kids reading at the proficient grade level. No, we're not going to do that. That's a problem. Now, I know you're sitting here thinking about what about West Briar? What about the kids here? And I've already said there's a lot to celebrate. By the way, there's a lot to celebrate too. I know I'm painting one side of it and not mentioning enough of the good side. There are good things that are happening across it, not just at West Briar. I'm talking about in the district. There are schools that are doing well, like your school. But guys, there are a whole bunch of schools that are not doing well. That's the challenge. The state didn't intervene because of you, West Briar, or the schools that are doing well. Our ACT scores in the district are at 25.9, 26%. Or not 26%, 26 is the average ACT score. That's good. Compared to the state of Texas has 20 points on average, 21 average ACT score. We're kicking their butt. That's good, right? Now, it's a selective group that takes the ACT, but I don't care. That's a good thing. And our district is doing well there. And there are other things we can talk about. We got some magnet programs that are the best in the nation. We got a River Oaks Elementary, I think is the best achievement in the nation or something very close to that. So there are some good things. So I don't want you to think that everything's gone to hell in a handbasket. But this gap and having 150 schools that aren't doing well, guys, that's a problem we got to solve, okay? That's a problem. You all are doing great in ELA and 6th grade math. That's something to celebrate. And I hope you have already done that. We'll see what the scores come out in August or September. These are a year ago, but I'm sure they're going to be just as strong. This is your 7th grade. 7th grade language arts, 65. That's really good. Okay, that's really good. Yes, we got to keep it going. Right? Yeah, that's your teacher should be happy about that. 16 is an anomaly. That's not good, right? But I'm sure you're going to get that back. You know, so we had a dip in 7th grade math a year ago. Hopefully that's been improved. And your 8th grade is even better, right? You have 68 in ELA 8th grade and 46 in 8th grade math. So a lot of teachers working really hard, parents, kids are working really hard. This is a good school. This is kind of like an ideal school, right? You have good diversity here. I love schools that have, you know, white, black, and brown kids all working and living and helping each other in the same community. Wish we could have that everywhere in America, right? That sort of community. Parent engagement here is good. A lot to be proud of here. You're not an NES school, not an NES aligned school. A lot to be proud of here. But we have work to do here too, right? I hope you're not going to, I hope teachers, you're not going to be happy with the 46, right? You're going to keep pushing that so that kids can compete well after high school. That's what you're going to do here, right? So we're going to work on that, and we're going to work on our achievement gap. Okay? What is your gap? Well, that's your 6th grade gap. Okay, so that's not good, right? So we got work to do. right? All of us, we, educators, administrators, we got some work to do. We can be very proud of what we're doing, so nobody needs to feel bad. But let's do a little bit more work on the achievement gap here in 6th grade and that math gap, okay, for our kids here. 7th grade ELA, the gap's not that wide, but you know, there's a gap there. And 7th grade math, we've already talked about. We're gonna flip the switch on that, okay? For all kids, not just our black kids. And then this is 8th grade. So, you know, we have some work to do again. You guys are doing great. And as a result, the district is not going to change much, right? You still have the autonomy you had last year. The changes that are going to happen, we're going to support special education a little bit better here. Of course, we're doing a lot more supports in NES and NES Align, but we're going to support special education, and the principal will be part of the entire district's principal evaluation system. Teachers will still be evaluated, but it'll be a little easier for the principal to evaluate teachers here. Other than that, you have your own autonomy, you have your own programs. None of that's going away unless you guys decide to take it away. It will be supported like before, okay? So one of the things we're not going to do in the district, and I hope you've heard this before, we're not going to take resources away from our schools that are doing well and put those resources in the NES or NES schools. What we are going to do, though, so whatever programming and budget that you've had, you're going to continue to have, okay? Unless your principal and team decides to change it. And there's no pressure for me to do that. So you're going to keep doing this so you can keep growing. Keep serving your kids well. What we are going to do, though, is when we save money by some cuts at central office, which we've done, when we get some more money from grants or philanthropic dollars, we're going to put those dollars unequally into our underserved populations. So I've been honest about that. We're not going to take, but we are going to place more resources in the underserved schools, all right, where the gap is higher, where the proficiency is lower. So just let you know, that's what we're doing in the district. All right, I talked about 3 problems in the district, and I got to talk about one more that will impact you as well, the 4th one. The 4th one has to do with the future. And this will impact you down the road. We, as a nation, we're too late. This is the last generation of kids in America before the skills gap will be locked in. You know how the achievement gap is almost locked in for the nation? By the way, it's not just HIC. The nation has not been able to move the achievement gap even 2 points in 20 years. COVID didn't help. We did move it 2 points in 20 years, which is nothing to celebrate, and then that got wiped out by COVID. So now we're back to square one in 22 years. That's us, America. Now, technology is growing faster. I mean, we're at the hockey stick part of the curve. ChatGPT, AI, just moving so fast. Just look at the growth of AI in the last year and its impact on the workforce already in 1 year. That's not going to slow down. Middle-class jobs are going to be leaving, or middle-level skilled jobs are going to be leaving. ChatGPT and AI will grow some skilled jobs, but not in equal numbers. So if we couldn't close the achievement gap, do you think we're going to close the skills gap if we don't do something drastically different? This is what I've been telling people, and I'm not prone to hyperbole or doomsday prophecies. I'm actually an optimist based on my own life story. But if we, HISD, do not do bold, transformative change, we have zero chance of changing the achievement gap or the skills gap. Zero. If we continue to do the same things we've always done in this district, zero chance. Zero. So I listen to, people want to keep the same things going that they've always done. And I just think about this. I think about our kids. I think about people who want us to wait a year or two before we make any changes. It's like every year is an impact on our kids. We have all the time in the world, adults. Our kids have zero time. They're behind, even. This is the last generation. So HISD has to do some bold things. It doesn't have to do it for every single school, though. There are school systems that are doing well, right? They're preparing kids for college. We have schools in our system that are preparing kids for college well. Kids are getting what they need. So not every school here in HISD has to be transformed. But if you know the district as a whole, and you know the data for all of our schools, then you know we have a whole bunch of schools that do need transformation. We cannot do the same thing. That's why our vision is to transform and do whole-scale systemic reform with 150 schools, not 273. There's probably another 50 that need some sort of change, but not like the whole-scale reform of NES and NES-aligned schools. That's where we are. So when you hear stuff that we're doing, it sounds like drastic or transformative. It is. And for those schools, there is a lot of change. And I'm very sympathetic. But guess what? We have a whole bunch of principals and a whole bunch of teachers stepping up. Not just here. By the way, here I heard from your principal, you only have a couple positions that are vacant right now. They would have been filled already, but NES stole a couple. But your principal is confident that she'll have those two filled in short order. So again, once again, you're going to open up your school with no vacancies here at West Briar, and that's something to celebrate. Good job. That's huge, right? But you have other teachers also. Your colleagues are stepping up in the NES and NES-aligned schools. Last year we had 644 vacancies. We're going to be well under that. Why? Because your teachers are stepping up. Even though it's going to be hard and scary, 57 schools volunteered to be NES. And the central office staff was not happy about that because that's a lot of schools to support in a fundamentally different way, right? But they volunteered to step up, and you have teachers stepping up and volunteering. Yeah, there was that noise about everybody's going to leave and, going to have a huge departure and blah, blah, blah. Well, it hasn't turned out because teachers are stepping up, not stepping out. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing for kids. All right, real quick, I'm gonna run through these slides. I know most of it doesn't apply to you, but I think you can see where we're headed as a district, and I want to give you a picture of that, okay? Even though not much is going to change here, I want to give you a little picture of that. So what does the transformation mean? You guys have high quality instruction. We need that level of high quality instruction in all the schools. And those of you here who are excellent teachers know that the leading indicator for higher achievement is how effective you are in the classroom, how the quality of instruction is in the classroom. That's a leading indicator. You have it here. We got to get it everywhere, okay? And that's not easy to do. So that's what we're going to do. And yes, even for you, it's coming, but you know, we only have so much money. We are going to pay higher salaries. We're going to get to a point where our salaries are higher everywhere. Now, it drives me a little crazy that, you know, being criticized for not raising salaries enough. So first of all, 3,000 teachers are going to receive a $10,000 stipend this year. 3,000. Those are the number of teachers in NES and NES Aligned schools. That's a good thing for the profession. On top of that, 1,000 of those 3,000, they're receiving about $15,000 to $20,000 bump up in base salary. I probably shouldn't tell this group this because you're thinking about, what about me, right? But not one person has had their salary raised. You all have the salary that was agreed to before I even got here. So the salary, and many of you are getting a retention bonus of $3,000, right? How many of you are getting that? Raise your hand. Teachers. Teachers, raise your hand if you're getting a retention bonus. Okay, good. All right. So that was a deal made before me, and we're honoring that. So you're getting that too. So overnight, we've raised salaries incredibly, okay? There is actually no money tree back there. We do have a budget we have to meet. But over time, this profession has to increase salaries, and we're going to increase every teacher's salary well above what you would normally expect, okay? Not this coming year. We're doing it for a third of the teachers, but your turn is coming too. All right. I haven't seen how you're coached here. I can only assume that you have your administrators are good coaches, give you great feedback to improve the quality of instruction. We need to do that in all of our schools. And we're starting with the NES and NES Aligned schools. This will help you as well. This is support. So sometimes central office, which is a big bureaucracy, which we're downsizing, sits at Hattie Mae and they seem so far away. You pick up the phone and it's hard to get somebody. That's going to change. Give us a minute, right, to get this up and running. And then this support, everything below the line, those are people in each of the divisions. So there's a division. Where's your division headquarters? West Briar. We have some of the members of the team here? Could you stand up, please? Just the people that are here. Woohoo! Good for you. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for being here. So each division has 3 groups of people, all at Westbury, you said. So they're closer to you, and they will be focused just on the schools in this division. So that group will be focused on 2 feeder patterns and another group on another 2 feeder patterns, et cetera. So hopefully we push the support closer to you so that it's not all at Hattie Mae. It's closer to you. That's another thing we're doing. Staffing model. Eventually, we're going to support you with this staffing model. We're starting with NES and NES Aligned schools. That means we're providing teacher apprentices and learning coaches so that you won't have to have substitutes. I don't have anything against subs. Subs are important. We need them on occasion. But the best thing to do is to have a person who's in the building every day, who's a teacher who wants a teacher apprentice who wants to be a teacher, and when there's a vacancy or just a person absent, they step in. They know your model, they know your kids, they step in. That's the best sort of person to have in your school. Science of reading. So, right, this year West Briar, you get to have the curriculum you have. that you want. I understand you're going to amplify a high-quality instructional materials. That's good. Next year, every school in the district has to have high-quality instructional material for reading, and approved by TEA, Texas Education Agency, that only will approve science of reading for ELA. We educators have fought the battle, and science of reading has won. We know how to teach kids how to read. You do too, but the science is you have to have decoding and phonics and high content knowledge in order to read well. So, by this point in middle school, your kids can probably decode already. But many of our schools have materials that don't emphasize decoding or phonics, elementary schools. So we're changing that. For dual language or bilingual programs, if you have a bilingual, I think you have a bilingual program here, you will continue to do what you've done. And we will support it in the ways that we have supported. Okay? So that's going to continue. For, this slide I already put up, but I circled or emphasized special education. All of us in the district have not done well in special ed. West Briar, I don't know your data on it, but as a district, we have been out of state and federal compliance. And in the profession, we have not served our special need kids as well as we should. Partly because we have placed too much on their special ed teachers. We want them to be good instructors because special needs students need good instruction, and then we give them all this compliance stuff to do. All these meetings, all these reports, all these things they have to comply with. That is way too much for our special ed teachers. So over time, we're going to address that across the district. Yes, we're starting with NES and NES aligned schools, but we are adding special education assistants. Those are teachers who will help special education teachers do the work, okay? And then we're going to focus on helping our special ed teachers be good instructors. This is probably the biggest thing. Don't get too jealous yet, okay? But eventually in the profession, we should make it so that teachers don't have to do a lot of the non-instructional tasks. So you're going to see at the NES and NES aligned schools that discipline will be handled by administrators. Lesson plans will be provided by the curriculum developers. Right now, your curriculum department is creating lesson plans for teachers. In ELA, math, not only the lesson plans, the PowerPoint, the demonstration of learning, the lesson objective, the answer key, 4 differentiated assignments, the answer key, all for every day, for every TEAK, Texas Essential Knowledge and Skills. For every standard, that's what they're doing. So that the teacher can take the lesson plan, review it, tweak it, change it if they want it, and then deliver high quality instruction. They can leave at 4:15 and be done. No lesson plans, no papers to grade. Why? Because they're grading a demonstration of learning, which is a 10-minute kind of mini quiz from start to finish, 10 minutes the whole class, every class period. Do they need to grade more papers? No. A learning coach can do that. So they won't even have to grade papers. They won't have to make copies. There's a copy clerk that will make the copies for them. We want to get as close to the hospital model as possible, which means You know, doctors don't have to prep the room. They don't put out their instruments. They don't clean anything. They don't take blood pressure, but they do the surgery, and they better be doggone good at it. For us, our teachers, we strip away all that. What we want them to be is the best doggone teacher, instructional expert possible. They need to teach like champions. They need to be on it. They need to teach 4 90-minute classes. So it's going to be tough, but all that other stuff, they won't have to worry about. We'll be using more technology, webcams, smartboards, interactive smartboards. You probably have that here too, your interactive smartboards. But it really helps with delivering high quality instruction for kids. If kids are sick, by the way, or at home for any reason, you know, let's say you have a kid who's suspended, that student can get right back into the class because they will be projected on the screen, the kids at home. They will see this class because the webcam is showing the class. The teacher will have a lavalier mobile microphone. There'll be a Bose speaker, so if a kid wants to ask a question from home, the whole class can hear. And when the teacher says, I want you to pair and share, the teacher will often have a student pair with the kid at home by just using the microphone. So the two are talking, just like the kid is in the class. By the way, we perfected this model, Third Future Schools, the network I came from, we perfected this during COVID, because we did only synchronous learning, so that kids could feel, only 20% of our kids were at home, the rest were in person, but those kids could feel like they were part of the class. So the same thing applies here if we use the technology right. Last thing, last thing for the classroom perspective. And you probably have your own discipline procedures, follow them, that's fine. Do you, because you're autonomous, you're not part of NES. But many of our schools are challenged by discipline. And it's getting in the way of teachers and high quality instruction. And we, the profession, have often allowed kids to be disruptive in the classroom. The stories are replete in our profession about teachers being told by principals, look, you got to deal with Johnny, figure it out. And it drives them crazy, but they do everything they can to deal with Johnny, you know, and he takes away from all the other kids, and it's a drain on the teacher, and many of them leave the profession because of it. I'm not making that up. You educators, you know this across the country. I'm not saying that happens here, guys. I'm saying in our profession that happens. So we got to help both. We got to help the teachers and the kids, and then we have to help that child who is disruptive. We got to do both, not just one. Okay? So, in the NES schools, and again, you do your own discipline the way you guys want to do your discipline. But in the NES schools, there's no disrespect to any teacher, period. Kids can't disrupt the learning environment. That's the classroom. And number 3, no bullying. Pretty easy. And then the question is, what happens to the child that breaks these rules? So what happens is, we remove the kid from the classroom. It doesn't mean that kid gets suspended, doesn't mean that we just put them in a corner with the dunce cap. Doesn't mean anything like that. What happens is, that child will be spoken to by a principal or AP or counselor or social worker, depends on the resources of that school, and then they will determine what to do with that child. Suspension is the last resort, because many of those kids are disruptive because of things that have happened at home, things that's in their environment, things they have very little control of. We get that. There are troubled kids who have huge challenges. So taking them out of the classroom doesn't mean we're not going to help them. But the last thing we're going to do is keep that kid in the classroom and disrupt the 25 other kids. Can we not do both? Can we take care of the kids in the classroom and the teacher, and then serve that kid over here? Now somebody's going to say, Well, you're pulling the kid out of class. They're going to miss instruction. Yes, we're going to take care of them, and to the extent that we can, we're going to give that kid instruction by putting them on, if in the cases where they're just minor disturbances and they just need a timeout kind of thing. Well, you don't get the timeout for an hour. You get to go to a place, whether it's in the team center or whether it's in the principal's office, you pull up the Chromebook and you get right back into class because every class has a webcam going. You get right back into class so you don't miss class. Now, you know, yes, you're going to hear the misinformation on the news. We used to have in the profession, I don't know if you have one here, ISS rooms, in-school suspension rooms, right? And if I had said in-school suspension rooms, we were going to expand it, nobody would have said anything. Well, in-school suspension rooms are not very good rooms for learning. And there are many in-school suspension rooms in our system today. You all don't have one, or do you? Yeah, so you all have an in-school suspension room. We'll stick the reporters on you next, but in-school suspension rooms are not a good thing. Better if that student doesn't spend a lot of time in school suspension room and spends some time for minor infractions on the Chromebook, right back into class. Actually, kids would rather behave in class than to be on the Chromebook outside of class. They learn after a while, like, oh man, this dude is crazy, and then he's not going to let me out of class. He's going to find some way to get me into class. So I might as well just stay in class and behave. Robert, we'll get to you in a minute, sir. Anyway, so that's pretty much what we're doing in the classroom. Last thing for kids. We're opening our doors at 6:30. Again, not you, NES. 6:30 to 5, so that parents can be served well, because I don't know who made the rules that 8 o'clock is the start time for parents, because if you got to go to work, usually many times you're at work before 8, right? So we open up at 6:30 so you can drop off your kid. Great teachers. We want our schools to have teachers like you have, okay? I mean, the NES schools to have teachers like you have. And then finally, and this is something for your future too, guys. We all have got to think differently about what kids need to know and be able to do in the year 2035. There's two gaps growing. One is the achievement gap. That's already there and is not getting better. Okay, that's one gap. There's another gap growing. It's the year 2035 competencies gap. Information literacy, communications, problem solving, learning how to learn, working in teams, working with AI. Those are things that employers want. Are we giving it to them? Are we preparing kids for that? Okay? You can't just start in 11th grade. Got to start earlier. Art of thinking, learning how to learn, dyad concept. And despite what you've heard, we love performance arts. We love electives. No electives are going away. 1 hour a day for electives, plus what we call dyad. So 1 hour a day for every kid for an elective, or specials for K1. And on top of that, we're doing dyad classes twice a week. And that's martial arts, piano, karate, photography, any number of things depending on what's available in the community, because these are taught by community members. So we get a photographer out there who has some extra time to spend with our kids to teach our kids real photography twice a week. We have a person who has a martial arts dojo, real dojo, who only has students at night or in the evening to come during the day to teach our kids, and so forth and so on. It's great for kids. It's great for the community because we pay $30 an hour. I mean, it's not a lot of money, but it's, you know, if you're just hanging around waiting for your evening dojo to start, why not? So that's what we do. That's what we call dyad. And then travel. Now, in our more resourced areas of town, the kids have traveled a lot. But in some of the underserved places of our community, of our district, kids have not traveled. And you know that travel is one of the best learning experiences ever. It gives you perspective, it gives you content knowledge, it inspires you, it shows you so much more of the world, gives you ideas, incites your passion. That's what travel does. And many of us have traveled, and we benefit from it, and our kids have traveled. So what we're trying to do, we can't replicate what well-resourced parents can do for their kids, but we can come close, especially with travel. We're going to send 8th graders out of country. In the network I came from, the 8th graders went to Japan this year. The year before, the 8th graders went to Costa Rica. And you should see the first time they get a passport is just something to behold. That alone was an experience. That alone, just getting a passport was, I mean, we had kids crying because they have a passport. By the way, we paid for it. We walked them through the process. We did all the paperwork, stuff like that. And we'll pay for every single dime of the travel. Also for the chaperones, we paid. There was a lot of competition to be a chaperone to go to Japan. 7th graders will take out of state because, you know, by the way, I have to raise money for this. We already have some philanthropic donors who said they're going to help pay for this because this is expensive. This is $4,000 per kid to go to Japan just for 4 days. Okay, so anyway, 7th graders out of state, they'll go to the network I came from. We sent 7th graders to DC, but it could be, you know, Seattle, and it'll still be a great learning experience for our kids. All right. I know I took a longer time today. I apologize for that. But I wanted to give you a sense of, this is the why, guys. This is why we're doing it. There's nothing crazy going on. Nothing. It is all focused. I got one agenda. One. And that is to serve the kids of HISD, the students. And if you know anything about me, you know I will put students first. And I know most of the noise is always about the adults. But the students, they're going to benefit. They're going to benefit from what we're doing. We have a sense of urgency because this is the last generation. A huge sense of urgency. And I appreciate that you, just from what I've seen about this school, what I've heard about this school, meeting your principal today, I know you have the same sense of urgency for your kids here, and that you want them to succeed. And I got to have all 273 schools having the same sort of passion, same sort of skill set, same sort of capacity to do right by kids. That's the mission. Okay? Who has the first question? Gee whiz. Okay. We got a microphone over here and a microphone over here. Robert Ceccarelli, you're going to ask a question? Please come to the microphone, sir. Yes, right here. Can you give him the mic first?
Y'all want to line up right here? Y'all can please line up over here on this side. Hello, sir.
And by the way, please ask the board members questions too. And I'm going to give them all the hard questions anyway, so.
For you, sir.
Mr. Miles.
Yes,
Go
sir.
a long way, and
Oh, and Robert, one second, sir. If you have a question or comment, can you please keep it to 1 minute? because we have a lot of people to get through, and we're already a little bit behind. Go ahead, sir.
yes, sir, there's going to be a lot of stuff going on. At Hillcrest High School, 1 month before you left, I asked you about 4 or 5 questions. You left right away. You left right away, sir. 1 month before you resigned in Dallas, I asked you about 4 or 5 questions. You left right away. It was similar to this. You didn't try to ask any of the questions that I wanted you to answer, and you just booked out. Okay? That's a true story. And one more question, sir, is about the discipline. You are doing this because as soon as you leave here, it's going to go right back it was, just like in Dallas, like Dade Middle School. You're using this to make you look good. You never talked about discipline in Dallas, what you're doing now. You want to get all the troublemakers out of the classroom so they do the best possible work. You need to do the same, play by the same rules before you got here. You're not playing by the same rules. Whatever they did before you're here, you do play by the same rules, except you put the best teachers in. We will not know it was the best teachers or not because you're playing all these extra perks to make it look good for the students to learn. But the only way we're going to find out, you got to play by the same rules. You're making yourself look good, and you're going to leave here, and you're going to go out in Dallas and go get them in 5 years, okay? And I'd like to have a meeting with you, what's going on with Burnett, Nuttall, and Marion Willard, okay? But I'm just trying to tell you, I know this guy. He's here to go get Dallas, and he's here to make himself look good. Play by the same rules, bring in the best teachers, because we will not know if it's the teachers or not, sir. But you need to stay where you were and back in Colorado, because you were no good in Dallas. People were mad with you. One more thing, sir. You wanted to fire the school board president's daughter's teacher, okay? And that's the same guy you wanted to get to change your contract for extra $150,000 retention money in 2015 instead of 2017. He's here for money. I know this guy very, very well, okay? Whatever happens, you want information, you get it from
All right,
me.
thank you, Mr. Ceccarelli. So, Robert, I like your passion, coming from Dallas. So, Robert, I like your passion, coming down, talk. Please don't interrupt me, Robert. And yeah, please have a seat. Thank you. I like your passion. And you know I'm about kids too. So, next question.
Hi, so I'm a parent at Ashford Elementary, which is part of this feeder system. I was really coming in hopeful to hear more about what's going to happen with NES-aligned schools because I'm at one. And your whole talk today was really focused on West Briar Middle School, and so I just want to acknowledge that there's more parents in the room than from West Briar Middle School because this was for the whole feeder system.
Yeah, and the guys, can you escort him out? No. Yeah, the whole presentation, actually all the slides were about NES and NES Align. So go ahead.
Right, so I just want to frame that for the rest of the questions that may be coming, that I may come, sorry. I may come back around with another question. I just want to make sure that you know that this is like the whole West feeder system, because a lot of it was like, what y'all are doing here at West Briar is fine, but it's like, but I'm not at West Briar.
Right.
So I just want to frame that for you. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thanks for framing that. I appreciate that.
Good morning, Mr. Miles. I'm Jackie Anderson, President of Houston Federation of Teachers. I don't really have a question for you, but I do have a comment. You always talk about how you came up, your upbringing. I want to tell you something about my upbringing. My parents always taught me that if you want to end right, you have to start right. Mr. Miles, you didn't start right, number one. And I also want to ask the Board of Managers the tough question. If you really believe within your heart that these changes and all of this transformation is going to be good for those NES students, why don't you enroll your children in those schools?
So, any comment, guys?
Thank you for sharing, Ms. Anderson. So my name is Adam Ravon. I actually grew up on the other side of Houston, the east side, Baytown. And like Mike, I was also one that grew up in poverty, and my mom, single mom with 7 kids, we didn't have much. So when I moved out of Houston because I went to the military as well. On my way back, when I got back, my ex-wife and I moved to Third Ward, built a house there, and we're excited about having our son go to the public school, which was right in our neighborhood. And we were told at the time that they couldn't provide the resources that our son needed. So he ended up moving out of that area and moving into multiple different schools before we found a school that was right for him. And so school choice is important, but I'll tell you, my son would have been in an NES school, and I would have wanted him to be thriving in that school, but it was just a situation where it didn't work for us. So everybody has that choice, and some of us in different zip codes and different incomes have the opportunity to receive greater resources and greater performance in the schools that we're aligned to. But now we're getting the opportunity to really make some change happen in an area that needs more support. And so that's why I support the superintendent.
Thanks, Adam. My son, George, goes to school at HISD, to a school that's not NES or NES aligned, but I would be happy to put him in an NES or NES aligned school. So if my son's school chose to be one next year, I'd be happy to continue to send him there. Thanks.
And when you think from think about the kid's perspective. Here's, we tried to show a little bit of it, right? So they won't be a latchkey kid as much, right? 6:30 to 5. That's not bad for kids. Maybe, I don't know how you can frame that as bad for a kid. They're going to have very few substitutes, if any. I don't know how that's bad for kids, because the teacher apprentices will be there and learning coaches. They're going to have higher quality instruction with high quality instructional materials, more than they've had before. I don't know how that's bad for kids. In the NES schools that were reconstituted, their higher proficiency level of the teachers, I don't know if they'll be complaining about that. In the DIAD program, the electives, they're not going to have fewer electives, so I don't think they'll complain about that. They're going to have DIAD program, martial arts, karate, all this, on top of their school. I don't know how you complain about that. So what are you talking about? You're probably talking about the change that some teachers feel that is happening, but not the kids. So let's see what we do for kids, and you can help by also saying to the kids, we're going to support you. We're going to do more high-quality instruction. We're going to give you DIAD. We're going to help you travel. If you come to school, you have to meet 92% attendance. You can help and make it better for kids.
I'm an HISD parent and a PTO board member at Bush Elementary, so my kids will eventually come to West Briar. First, I want to acknowledge that you have a very difficult job, so I want to thank you for stepping up to actually do this, because I think that you have a lot of challenges ahead of you. You very briefly touched on the finances, and I know that wasn't the point of the talk today, but I do think it's something that's very important for our district. I know that it's very difficult to distribute finances across the district, especially one this large. And I know that there are schools that need more money than other schools, so it can't be distributed equally, and I absolutely understand that. And I definitely have a bias being a Bush Elementary parent. I just know that for our school in particular, we're not Title I, so we don't get the same amount of funding that other schools get. And I know that we struggle to get funding that we need for safety concerns and things like that for our children. And so I was just wondering if you could comment maybe just a little bit on how you might think about financial equity across the district and how that might look for Title I versus non-Title I schools and just schools in general. That
is a great question, and thanks for framing it and let me address the question specifically and then address the finances more broadly. It is interesting what the perspective is. And when I go to these other community meetings, I get some people are very angry at me, even though I didn't create the system that we have. They're angry because they feel like they haven't been getting the same resources as the west side of town. That's what some of them say, okay? And I don't know if you've heard that before. So, you know, there's a perception problem, right? So let me address it. So there is a perception problem. There's a challenge with perception, but in most cases, they're right. In most cases, there are schools in the underserved parts of town that don't have the same resources as some other schools. Now, that's a fact. One thing that everybody needs to understand, though, is there are schools, even throughout the entire district, that don't have proper resources to do the job that we want them to do. Whether it's security, whether it's magnet, whether it's some other program. So it is nuanced and it's difficult. But one thing that we as a district have not been willing to do is change the current formula. We have not been willing to reprioritize at all. The other thing that's impacting your question, and it is the right question, and I feel for you here, the autonomous system has not been the most effective financially. Ask your principals everywhere whether they have enough money. Not one of them will say they do. Ask them whether they want to do the budgeting. I don't know anyone that says they do, because they never have enough money, because we give you a certain amount and then you just have to figure it out. Whereas for the NES and NES Align, we figure out the outcome and the instructional model, and then we fund it. And all we do is give the principal $100 per student discretionary money and $100 per student instructional supply money, and that's it. But if they need something else, like ViewSonics, interactive smartboards, we just give it to them. If they need additional curriculum, like, you know, Amplify or Eureka Math, we just buy it. That's a better way of doing business down the road. So you're right, it's not an easy question. What I can say about that today is we will continue to provide the level of support that was promised already, and then we will try to do as much as we can to provide better special ed services, so more money there, and eventually give you more money for teacher apprentices and things like that. We will also handle individual requests on a need case-by-case basis. For example, I was at Yates High School, and if you had the same problem as this one man said, they have handheld calculators that are old for the high school kids, calculators that are old, break a lot, and he wants to know this is what he said, why do we have these and Lamar and Bel Air have way nicer colored graph ones? And I said, I don't know, but his perception was those schools are better resourced and his is not. So we're going to buy those calculators for Yates, and if you have issues like that where it's a serious inequity for kids, even for higher socioeconomic areas, there's some inequities too. Let's try to address that as well. Last two things, security. It's not just here, guys. We have several buildings that need better security. Now we're gonna support our police force. We just provided them with a raise. We're adding police members. We're adding emergency response teams. We're paying for that. We're doing a facility audit again so that we can triage. You guys have one point of entry, that's good, but you don't have a vestibule, which is not good. But we have other buildings that have multiple points of entry, no buzz-in system, right? So we're going to have to triage that because we don't have the money to do everything. And then you all are going to help me pass a bond so we can fix all of our security needs, okay, with that bond. Last thing, finances. It's a huge question. This is not a cheap proposition. We are fortunate. One of the things that I thought was good, although unnecessary, the district has a $1 billion fund balance. How much fund balance do you need in a district this size? Anybody want to take a guess? Say that? $500,000. Yeah, actually, $500 million is what you need. In order to keep our AAA bond rating, I'd like to be a little higher, so $600 million. Because, you know, if you have a AAA bond rating, then when you go out for a bond, it'll be cheaper for us. Anyway, $600 million. We're not going to go down to $600 million, but we are going to dip into the fund balance to do this transformational change. Okay, and the board will get a report on this next week, on Thursday, on what actually this, all this transformation is going to cost. So I know that was a long, nuanced answer, but thanks for the question.
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Thank you for valuing our teachers with increased pay in communities that need more resources like NES schools. I understand that sometimes issues like your concern with reading are systemic, and sometimes we need to improve our vertical alignment through feeder patterns. Elementary schools are the foundation to middle school. Middle schools are the foundation to high school. What I don't understand is that in your salary schedule, elementary school teachers seem to be valued less than middle school and high school teachers. There's a $10,000 difference between English 2 and 5th grade ELA teachers. The pre-K teachers, who are the foundation for reading, are paid $24,000 less than high school teachers. Since you value tests, elementary schools have 7-star tests, middle schools have 8-star tests, high schools have only 5-star tests. So my question is, how do you value the teachers who build the foundation when they are paid less?
Yeah, that's a fair question, which is a question you can apply to the whole profession, right? Because everywhere in America, pre-K and kindergarten teachers get paid less than middle school teachers, get less than high school teachers. So that's a fair question, but you know, that's part of the system-wide thing that we're doing, that we're trying to change. And you're only talking about the NES schools, because I got an answer for you in the pay for performance plan, which is coming up. Teachers should be paid for their effectiveness. In the pay for performance plan, a kindergarten teacher can get paid just as much as a high school teacher and as much as a 6th grade reading teacher based on their level of proficiency. So if you're proficient in the pay for performance plan, regardless of what you teach, even elective teachers, you get $80,000 base salary. So that will solve your question. But it's not an answer to the question. The answer to the question is that in the NES system, it's a hospital model. There are only a few ways to pay teachers in America. One is the salary schedule, which I hope everybody knows doesn't work and won't raise salaries overall. You'll never be able to pay the high wages we want on the traditional salary schedule. So I hope the Teachers Federation and Teachers Union will help us get rid of the salary schedule so you can get higher money. The second way is incentive pay, which is on top of your regular salary, you get an incentive for doing well, achievement-wise. The third way is a pay for performance system that very few districts in America have. except for Dallas and a couple others, Washington, D.C. And the research is very clear that that sort of system raises achievement and also raises salary. The fourth way is a hospital model, and only third future schools and NES schools will have it. That's it, those four ways. I can't give you a long study on the differences between the four. The hospital model is one where you pay for the value that a person brings to the organization and to the outcomes that you want. So don't take offense. This is just how the model works. The hospital model says a sixth grade reading teacher brings more value to the organization than an elementary PE teacher. Now you can disagree with that all you want, but there's an argument for that. It's like hospitals not saying everybody's a doctor is a doctor is a doctor. No, that's not true. Surgeon's a doctor, anesthesiologist is a doctor. And then there's a general practitioner. They're all doctors, but they're not all valued the same. Now that's a hospital model, and that's the least model that we'll use in the district. Most will be paid for performance. This year it's just traditional salary schedule.
Hi, thank you so much for taking my question. My name's Suzanne Lyons. I'm a library advocate for the school libraries. My question is, I loved hearing you say you love librarians, because I love them too. And I love vibrant and exciting library programs. But I'm going to pivot. I want to talk a little bit about the fiscal responsibilities that have taken place in the library. So the past 2 years, the libraries have been transformed. NES schools particularly, but all schools across the district. Literally millions of dollars have been spent in libraries to put those materials in. So I'm hearing about the honor system for materials. So I'm wondering how the district is going to maintain a fiscal responsibility for literally millions of dollars that has been put into those libraries using that honor system. How is inventory going to be taken, and how is it going to be different? West Briar has an amazing librarian. Not all middle schools and schools that are NES schools will have that. And then the NESA schools where it's case by case, not sure what the cases are that discriminate between that, but that's a different issue. So my last part to this is also how is the district going to be handling the House Bill Reader Act, which is coming into law, coming up in the next few months, really, which regulates the types of materials that can be put in school libraries as well as in classroom library collections. Who's going to be responsible for making sure that that law is followed and embraced?
So first of all, there's 188 schools in the district that will not be NES or NES aligned. So, and you're one of them, West Briar. So this question doesn't apply to you because you're going to continue to do what you need to do. It doesn't apply to you, West Briar, and many other schools represented here. Thank you for reminding me. So that's point number one. Point number two, we will do the best we can with preserving resources that the district gets. But sometimes when you're doing new programs and transformation, there's no obligation to protect things that you bought in the past. For example, we're going to change out curriculum that was bought. If you have a Fontes and Pinnell curriculum, you can continue to use it this year for reading, elementary reading. But you will not use it the year after, right? And I will not protect the Fontes and Pinnell. It's like, well, we spent millions of dollars on it. Well, I'm sorry you did that. We're going to use our money differently. So something similar can be said for the libraries, except we're not throwing out any books. We're not getting rid of the books. In fact, in the team centers, because kids get there early at 6:30, this is my experience, and leave at 5, so before and after school, kids can be in 2 places in the morning, team center or cafeteria. So in the team center, we don't let them sleep. It's because that's a place of study and work. and we want that in their head. So if they want to sleep or socialize at 6:30, they can go to the cafeteria. And they can't run around and act a fool, but they can just talk quietly and be in the cafeteria. In the library, or in the team center, by the way, not all libraries are team center, not all team centers are libraries. In the team center, if it is in a library, they have to read or work, and you'll see kids just pulling books off the shelves and then putting them back after they're done reading. And because they're a captive audience and they have to do something, almost all of them are reading books in the team center, if the team center is a library. The same thing after school. So those books will probably get good use. So we'll keep them. To answer your legal question, yeah, we'll follow the law. I'm not about to break any law, but we have no intention of getting rid of books that are good for kids. We'll follow the law, but we'll keep our books, and we'll do it in a way that makes sense through the administration.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to come ask a question. I'm at an NES-aligned school, and first off, I wanted to see if there's any way you could keep your comments a little bit shorter, just because I know, based on the time, I don't want anybody to miss out on their opportunity to speak. But I'm really glad that you brought up the $500 million bond needed, because in 2022 alone, according to the NAEP data that you share, every student in HISD, actually in Texas, is underfunded compared to the nation by $3,300 per year. So every student. The NAEP data, and if you want to stay after, I will be happy to share it with you, but you can also just Google NAEP. $3,300 per year. 189,000 students in HISD alone. How much is that total? $567 million per year that we're underfunded. The state underfunds our students compared to the nation. So, in just that, I suspect that's left off the data, because the very people who appointed Mr. Miles are the people who have that influence to change that. So that's not what I came to say today, so I don't need you to respond to that, but my questions are, so at my school, I know, and at other NES-aligned schools that were quote-unquote opted into this, the teachers didn't really have a say. I know some teachers are trying to transfer to non-NES-aligned schools, and HR is telling them that they cannot transfer to a non-NES school. The deadline for them to transfer, to request a transfer, is Tuesday. So my question for you is, can they transfer to a non-NES school? 2, if HR tells them that they can't transfer to a non-NES school, what can they do to make sure that that can happen?
So, thank you. I'll try to be fast, but I also try to answer the question. And I will address the $530 million.
It's not a suggestive number. It's NAEP data.
I said I will address the $530 million. I will address the $530 million. I will address the $567 million. Yeah, I will address the $567 million question. I didn't bring it up just because there's 100,000 things to bring up, and that's not one I wanted to bring up, because I don't have much control over that. And one of the things I don't want to excuse is say, like other districts, we can't do anything, Mr. Miles, we can't change anything, we can't transform big ways because we don't have enough money. Well, you always have enough money to do what you prioritize. We're going to raise our student achievement. We're going to support kids with the money that we have. Would it be great to have more money? And you've never heard me say we don't want more money from the state. Yes, it would be better. But you know what? If you let that stop you every time, you will do nothing, and you will just take away. With regard to the deadline for changing, and we pushed this back, from NES or NES, non-NES to NES is August 1st. Why? Because at some point you got to stop the musical chairs. Yes, some people are moving. I already told you, even though you're not West Briar, I did tell the West Briar teachers that their principal had 3 or 4 people leave here to go to NES, and that causes a problem here, but she's got a solution because that's how great she is. But by August 1st, we got to stop this. And if you're told that you can't change, it may be because if a losing school loses more than 4, we stop it. If a teacher wants to move from a school that's non-NES and there's more than 4, that's a pain on that school. So you might be told to stop, but August 1st everything stops. So we just have to wait till Tuesday. Okay. That's probably the case, and I don't know all the reasons, but yeah, check with HR, and they'll help you out.
Good morning, Mr. Miles. My name's Katie Krushka. I'm a media specialist down in Grissom. I am in the South Division, but I am from this side of town. I do understand the inequity of all kinds of different scenarios, let's put it that way. But my question is this, and this is something to research for everybody. If STAR is now administered pretty much completely online, including for all SPED students as well, if the students are doing paper versions, paper work, the majority of their work is not going to be on computers like before. Good, bad, or indifferent, that's not the point. How are we going to prepare them for the future if we're based off of STAR scores and the test is on the computer, but they're practicing and learning everything on paper? People who have taught in the schools with the new STAR system know it takes at least about a month or longer to even go through the online practice so the kids know what they're doing. So the kids know how to address and deal with the different modifications. Mm-hmm. Something to consider for the curriculum and your oversight of the curriculum when these things are being designed. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Number one, you know, it's not all about the STAR, even though that's how it's been characterized. Is the STAR important? Yeah, it's a test that we have to take, but here's the real importance. Can the kids read? That's what's important. So let's measure it somehow, unless you just want to say, oh yeah, they feel good about the reading, Mr. Miles, so they must be able to read. And a teacher says, oh yeah, I taught them well, Mr. Miles, so that must mean they are able to read. Well, sorry, but I'm not going to take that, right? We're gonna measure it somehow. So you want to use DIBELS? Let's use DIBELS. It's a legitimate norm reference, nationally assessment to help your kids identify whether they can read or not. Let's use NWA, nationally normed reference, research-based assessment to tell whether your kids can read or not. So, you know, STAR is just a summative test that we have to do. But we're going to find out how we can read one way or the other so we can help kids grow better. And we can help our teachers teach reading better. Okay? That's what's important. With regard to the paper pencil thing, look, I've been around a long time. I know exactly what you're saying. We need to do both. It's not just, you don't want kids on the computer the whole time. That's actually bad for them too. So how about we do both? In Third Future Schools, we had a good balance. We had a lot of paper so kids could annotate and learn what's important. That helps them focus, right? And they could read on paper, and then we had days where we just did online things so that they can get used to the computer as well. And look up their scores, okay? The scores from the Third Future Schools in Texas and how much they grew. I'll just tell you, they went from 58 accountability points to 86 in 1 year, that sector college prep, where the principal will be going to next week, or the week after, I mean. And then they grew in Sam Houston Elementary School from 53 accountability points to 89 in 2 years. So it works. Understand the question. We'll handle it right. All right, we have time for, it's 11 o'clock, but let's take 4 more questions.
Good morning, Mr. Mike. So I'm here on regarding a different population, which is SPED. With the state of special education, what changes, if any, should be expected? Is it going to be business as usual? Specifically, 12 years of record keeping, even with the TA intervention, the district has not and has failed. I can speak for myself, the kids in SPED. Even with IEP goals set, IEPs, or even goals, or even data, they cannot provide any proof behind the data that they're arriving at. So with this being said, how is that going to change? How soon? With the work of, with the help of TA. Also, will the district have tools in place to have IEPs implemented in magnet schools of choice if the kids in SPED are in those schools? Because I've been told, even if a kid meets the matrix to go to a magnet school, we were specifically told that they need to be removed because they cannot be accommodated. And the TA is aware of that as well. So what's going to be done if a child does qualify, meets the matrix to go to a magnet school and have their IEP implemented, as to them being removed or them saying, you know, they have to go to their zone school, even though the federal law states they have to make them fit. They have not made them fit in 12 years.
Yeah, so thanks for raising it. I can't speak to any specific case in public, but I understand exactly what you're saying. I said earlier today, as a district, we have not been doing right by our special ed population. And not only have we not been doing right by them, we have failed state and federal compliance. One of the exit criteria for this intervention, and by the way, if I could turn over the district and having met these 3 criteria, I would like to do that as soon as possible. Not that I don't love y'all, but you know, the mission is to turn around the district. We can't have any schools with multiple years of DNF status. And the second bucket is we have to comply with state and federal law with regard to special education. So all I can say is that we're working on the compliance piece, and also if any child has an IEP, regardless of where they are, we will serve that student's needs per the law and per their IEP. And I'll try to be faster, but 3 more. Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for coming to Houston and helping our children. The weight that you carry is immense, and I give you my full support. I am the product of the poorest school district in this country. I am certified to teach math for grades 4 through 12. I have a master's degree in curriculum and instruction and a master's degree in program evaluation. I have attended a top 5 PhD program in qualitative and quantitative mixed methods in improving education. I have research publications in raising student outcomes through effectively integrating technology in STEM classrooms. I am the mother of 4, one who is 504. For the past 7 years, I have been very outspoken about the subpar math instruction that my children have received here in West Houston. Administrators dismiss me because these are the good schools. These good schools have non-existent peer mentorship, no in-class visits. Classroom panic button alarms go ignored. Principals spend all their time, or most of their time, looking for students who leave campus midday. Special ed generalists prepare gifted students for Algebra 1. The district provides only 2 professional development courses in math in one source, but these are directed at elementary levels and not at secondary levels, so there is nothing to help the secondary teachers improve. Good schools use HB 4545 funding to give first-year teachers a class period to help students improve math proficiency, but only 2 to 3 students appear for help in a semester. These good schools perpetually have teacher specialists with social science backgrounds that oversee the math departments, so no one has the technical background to understand parent concerns. Principals don't do anything either. The inmates are running the prison. These good schools do not correct, oversee, reassign, or terminate teachers that repeatedly do not correct their erroneous teaching materials, despite thousands of complaints. Year after year, I see my own children get underserved in the exact same ways because erroneous teaching materials get passed around in effective PLCs. These good schools hide ineffective teaching through grade inflation. When complaints finally find and reach the inaccessible district that I have spoken to in the back of that room, they incredulously ask me why I am complaining because my students' grades are high. When it finally reaches the district curriculum specialists that you have, they do not have the math skills to be able to interpret the TEKS and the curriculum with fidelity. They do nothing to correct the problems. At the district level, no one follows up longitudinally with any remediation because the SSOs get reassigned every year, and they reassign cases mid-complaint without even explanation.
Yeah,
These people in the back of the room.
Yeah, can you?
I attended a
get to your
training
question?
meeting in which we discussed that student outcomes don't change until adult behaviors change.
Yep.
What are you doing to address these systemic behaviors in your campus and district employees that negatively impact the student outcomes in NES and non-NES schools?
Well, first I'm going to invite you to be part of the curriculum department so you can help with that.
I am only available part-time. That's part of the problem with ISD.
Okay. But let me answer it. It's a serious question, though. And what you've raised is that, look, even our good schools, meaning schools that get higher achievement, can improve. And one of the things that I've discovered is that we have systems and processes, many at central office, that are broken. I'll just give you one example, okay? And I'm not trying to pick on any department, but this gives you a sense of what you're talking about and what we have to do. Lowering the student vacancies was not a part of Destination 2035. It wasn't a plan that I put in place because I didn't think we'd need it. But then I found out that we had 644 vacancies last year at the start of school. Last year. Even after the raise, the bump in pay, and very little change happening, this district had 644 vacancies. Why? And if we're going to address it, wow, if you try to address that, it is a nightmare, crazy process, which I have now broken to China so that we can get our vacancy number down, because the process wasn't working. It's convoluted, crazy. Took too many people touching too many pieces of paper to get somebody hired. Principals complained about it. They said, look, we want this person hired, and it's going to be 3 weeks before they get an offer letter. That's crazy. And we're losing good teachers that way. And it's like, so you had 644 a year ago. You didn't change anything? You didn't do anything different? No, no, they didn't do anything different. So my team is doing something different. We're getting those vacancies down, and they're having to work overtime. They're having to break systems, but even the electronic platform that they use to keep track of all this stuff cannot keep up. It's designed for slow and redundancy. So I know that's a long way of answering your question. The answer to your question is that we have a lot of areas, processes to fix. Not just at central office, also elsewhere. And yes, even our effective schools have some teachers that can improve their effectiveness, right? Because it's not the same across the board. Even in our effective schools, there are some parents complaining about a teacher who should not be teaching their kids because they're not rigorous enough. So I hear what you're saying. I can't, you named a lot of stuff there, so we don't have time to talk about every one. But generally, your point is well taken. We got a lot of work to do systemically. Last two questions.
You know, we can touch base offline on it. So the first question is about a student's feeder pattern. Is it determined based on where the child is attending now for elementary or middle school, or is it based on the student's address?
It's based on where the kid is attending school, so elementary, middle, and high. So we created these feeder patterns.
So with that, my concern is we are, our feeder school is Wisdom High School, which is NES affiliated. And one of the great things about MIMS and other magnet schools, it doesn't matter if it's language immersion or anything, is the autonomy that they've had, which leads me into the second question. There was, I'm sure you and your team have seen it, a news article, I think it was on Houston Public Media, about a draft of a plan that goes beyond the initial 150 schools that you intend to make NES affiliated, you know, whatever designation, and it states that only 10% by 24-25 will have that autonomy. And so what my fear is that you have golden programs like MIMS and others that will be commoditized.
Let me answer.
Okay.
And then let me go. Can you ask me afterwards? Because, yeah, you can. Well, I'll stay late to answer your questions. All right. So, on the magnet programs, if you have a magnet schools, we have had no plan, even though we'll look to build one, about the magnet schools. Magnet schools are magnet schools, and there's no plan to change that. Okay? Now, we'll probably look at if you have a huge achievement gap or something like that down the road, not this year, we'll probably provide supports to close that achievement gap. Or if you don't have a high quality instructional reading material for elementary magnet schools, we'll probably insist on that. But there's been no discussion about that so far. What you're probably talking about is the lady is talking about is the defined autonomy program, which all of us will look at defined autonomy. Magnet programs will have the autonomy that magnet programs have always enjoyed. Last question.
So first of all, what just happened here is what the village does. I was in front of her, and then I let her in front of me, and then we compared our questions and said, you know what, let me go ahead and ask mine. Good morning. My name is Dr. Cook. I am the lead ELA teacher here at West Briar Middle School. I started out at Patrick Henry in 2017, so I'm very well aware of the NES schools and what the needs are. Thank you for offering the things that you're offering for our underserved students. We are also serving the underprivileged students here. Dr. Michelin, my God, we went on a bus trip last year to the Abbeys so that as teachers, we can all understand who we're serving. We are serving students that have the need no matter what area they live in. My statement to you, first of all, thank you for saying doctors are not all the same, because I always tell my students, yes, I have a doctorate, but that means I know what I know, I just don't know everything. So we work together on that. I'm here on behalf of not only West Briar Middle School, but also the West Side schools. Life happens, and journeys happen. At West Briar, I was the classroom culture specialist under Career Pathways, looking forward to be the mentor teacher advocate for CIC here. Those stipends not only helped me, but I continue to do what I do naturally. and help other teachers, because I'm a novice teacher. 31 years is nothing to laugh at, you know? And I just want to know from you, because a little bit of history about me too. 2 years ago, my 30-year-old daughter passed. So I had to adopt my granddaughter, and I'm raising her now. She is now going to be at Bush Elementary. So I believe in HISD. I even tried to be on the board of managers, but as soon as I read the application, it said you can't be an employee and be on the board of managers. I come from a background of being a superintendent in another state, and we can talk one-on-one about that, because yes, it was a charter school movement. So I understand the mission, the vision, and I want us to be able to collaborate as a village to make this work for every school, not just NES schools. The question that we have here, because we did not get a raise, we only got that step, which step is not cost of living. Will we continue to have the stipends that we had before? I know Career Pathways is gone, but will we still have a program similar to that with stipends and also mentoring teachers? Now, granted, I do it naturally, so I'm going to do it anyway. But a stipend would help me in my life history and what's going on in my life. And I don't want that to hinder me having to go get another job and not be able to give 110% while I'm here at this school. So if you can address those stipends, and also what those availabilities are going to be for us, the teachers here at West Briar and on the west side.
Mm-hmm. So stipends, we have not changed the stipends for the non-NES and NES schools. So stipends will continue this year. I can't promise that for future years. With regard to the salary and the amount, this is what I understand. You all, the district before me, right, the administration before my administration, made a deal with teachers and everybody that they were going to give a huge raise a year ago, right, to 61,000. I think it was 5,000, 6,000, maybe even more raise, right? And that was an agreement that instead of doing 4 and 4, you would get, you know, most of it right up front. That happened. So you cannot change that deal, right, and be angry about it. Because it could have been 4 and 4 or 3 and 3, something like that, 4,000 and 4,000, 3,000 or 3, but instead it was 7 or 8,000, right? Tell me if I'm wrong. And then only a step this year, because people wanted a bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush, right? They wanted that money, so you couldn't renege district. So it's not really fair to complain if you only got a step, guys, right? And besides that, we don't have money to do another 4,000, another 3,000. We will, over time, I've said, we're going to raise salaries over time more than usual, okay? That's my goal, because teachers deserve that, number one. And two, we just have to reprioritize and put salaries as a priority and some other things not. But we can't do everything that we've always done. Some things got to go then. All right? It's my job to prioritize. All right. Let's give the last word to the board members, please, and then I'll close.
Just a quick note to everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your comments. We appreciate you.
Ditto, and we'll remain as well a little bit later so that you can ask questions and that sort of thing regarding policies and vision for the future.
Thank you. I know everybody didn't get a chance to ask questions, but we have been here quite a while, and I know I've spoken, but it was important to get some of the information out. We'll hang out here a little bit longer to ask your questions. Thank you for showing up today, not just West Briar, but everybody else who showed up today. I really appreciate it.